Hello and welcome to Video Game Hangover. I'm Randy Dickinson and I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Hello, I'm DJ Ross. I am in Mountain View, California.
Each week here on Video Game Hangover, we talk about the games that have been keeping us up at night. This week that includes Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster and Horizon Zero Dawn. I can't help but notice Elden Ring isn't on that list.
I was going to say, surely you mean Horizon Journey to the West, or what? Forbidden West, or Elden West.
Are we not playing the new hotness? Are you playing a 20-year-old Final Fantasy game? I'm playing
This just came out, for your information.
Oh, okay, excuse me. And I'm playing a 5-year-old Horizon game.
Okay, well, never let it be said that, I don't know, we're not on top of trends.
We may be the only internet podcast. Well, they're all internet podcasts, aren't they? We may be the only gaming podcast that isn't talking about Elden Ring this week.
You want to talk about Elden Ring? How much Elden Ring did you play?
I played exactly 0% of Elden Ring.
0%. Okay, well,
I made it about 70% of the way through the trailer, though.
Oh, that's farther than I made it.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, well, I don't know. I don't remember.
No, it's not my thing. Not my kind of game.
You know, I'm not sure if it's my type of game. I feel like I've played many FromSoft games at this point, but there's always like an asterisk attached to each of my encounters with them. Like I played probably the most the farthest I've gotten into one of these was probably Demon Souls back on the PS3. And I was like, this is pretty fun, actually. But I just, I think I got distracted by something else happening at the time. I don't remember. And then I didn't get on board with Dark Souls 1, but everybody was super excited about it. So I decided that I would go all in on Dark Souls 2 and pick that up at release. And then I think the prevailing opinion on Dark Souls 2 is it is the worst one. Oh. So I felt kind of betrayed.
Is that why there's not a Dark Souls 3?
Well, I mean, there is a Dark Souls 3. I'm not sure where that was going.
I didn't know that. I thought there was not. I thought there was only a 1 and 2.
Oh yeah, well, Dark Souls 3 is apparently amazing. At least if you listen to the same people that I listen to. But I felt burned by Dark Souls 2.
Didn't even know that existed.
It was just that far off your radar.
Yeah. I tried playing Bloodborne, which is also a FromSoft game, right?
Yeah.
And I played the first 45 minutes for 4 hours. And that told me everything I need to know. This is not my kind of game. I don't have time for this. I just don't have the patience to deal with it. It's been very cool that so many people are so excited about Elden Ring over the last couple of weeks. But it's weird sort of not being a part of that conversation, not sharing, the collective gamer versus enthusiasm for this new game.
I don't know. I'm kind of over it myself.
Yeah. I feel a tiny bit left out, but
Sure. No, I mean I get that too with a lot of the big new games coming out. But
I have all of these other games.
So I wonder if I've just had weird experiences with these Dark Souls games up to this point. Like I played Bloodborne, and I think I enjoyed that, but it was during the backlog attack, so I was kind of pressured to move on to the next thing whenever we did that.
Yeah, that was my take on it as well. Yeah, it's like, can't play more of this. Got to play next game.
But no, sometimes I feel like I should go back to Bloodborne and see if I'm more into it than I thought. But this thing, I was surprised. I was watching people stream it because I thought it's very unlikely that I'm going to actually pick this up and play it. So I might as well just watch somebody else play it.
Yeah. By this thing, you mean Elden Ring?
Yeah, Elden Ring. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was I was shocked by how close it looks to just any other Dark Souls game. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised because that's essentially what it is. But from like minute one of the game, it's just the same interface and the same sort of kind of floaty motion and rolling and dodging around enemies. And I just had to keep telling myself, well, I don't know what I was expecting. I guess it's good that it looks very familiar to Dark Souls players.
Sure.
But I thought, like, where's the new thing? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
If Dark Souls players popped this in and, they were driving around Vice City in their hot rod, that would have been...
They just hop on a moped immediately.
That would have been super surprising for most of us, but not this game.
Yeah. I did have an interesting sort of just weird reaction to some of the footage that I watched, though, because the streamer I was watching was just exploring the open world, because it's open world this time. And they saw something off in the distance and were like, oh, what is that thing? What is it, like a creature? Is it an enemy? I don't know what that is. I want to go check it out. And I had just this like sort of guttural reaction where I thought, oh, that feels like Breath of the Wild. Like those moments where you just see something in the distance and be like, I have no idea what that is. Let's go check it out.
That's my new mission. Exactly.
Yeah. And I've heard that from a lot of people, actually, that they get sort of Breath of the Wild vibes from this. Just it has similar feeling to that, like Breath of the Wild's open world specifically, which I thought was very interesting. Because Breath of the Wild was so different than a lot of the other open world games I played to that point, which were typically sort of like the Ubisoft or the Rockstar model.
Yeah.
So to have anything that starts to approach that same feeling that I got from Breath of the Wild is kind of exciting, but I don't know if it's enough to get me to plunge into another Dark Souls game.
I'm getting a little bit of that with Horizon Zero Dawn, in that the early hours, and we'll talk a little bit more at length about Horizon, but it's just relevant to your point about your observation about open world games, is that it was running pretty lean, pretty linear in the early hours, and then at some point you do a thing and the map opens up and there's just icons everywhere. And I'm like, oh, here's where it turns into an open world game.
Here's where it turns into that specific open world game.
Right. It just turns into Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
And, people like those Assassin's Creed games. It has never been the stripe of open world that has done it for me. So, I was a little disappointed, unfortunately, to see that Horizon did a little bit of a bait and switch. You get, a good solid 3 or 4 hours of like, you're on a path, you're doing a thing, you've got an objective. And it sort of, it drives you through it, pretty aggressively, I guess, through those first couple of hours. And then, just turns into Map Fest.
Map Fest, yeah. Yeah, that is, sounds like my experience playing Horizon.
Yeah. But we'll come back to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Table that for now.
Yeah. I got a new Xbox. That's exciting.
Oh.
I could share that. I got a Xbox Series S.
That is the tiny one.
Right. For those who can't keep up, like me, with Microsoft's dubious naming conventions, the Xbox Series S is the new one that looks like a little speaker, not the one that looks like a little refrigerator like I had in college.
Right, that's the Series X.
Correct. This is the one that doesn't have a disk slot, that has a fairly limited hard drive. It's only got a 512 gigabyte hard drive.
Oh, that's a big step for you.
And it's a pretty big... it's a pretty big sort of downsize, that's the right word, from my previous Xbox One, which was this massive brick of a machine.
Did you have the OG Xbox One?
Yeah, I think it was a launch one. It was one of the early days. This huge thing. I say huge, knowing that the PS5 was waiting just a few years later to show me up. But It does feel, I mean, comparatively speaking, having the Xbox Series S on a shelf next to the old Xbox One, it's kind of crazy that they were able to shrink that machine down. It took a lot out of it, obviously, to get it to that point, but it is, it's about half the size of the Xbox One. So fully download, you can't put any discs in the thing. I basically wanted a machine that was going to be a good kind of Game Pass for me, machine for me, where I could do, a few of the indies that Microsoft occasionally published, and really just kind of take advantage of some of the cool games that they curate onto the Game Pass subscription. Yeah. So this seemed like a perfect way to do it, and it couldn't beat the price, $250. They're fairly easy to find. I see deals for them all the time. I actually got mine for $50 off retail. So it was it feels like a good choice.
I'm kind of interested in one of these just as like a backwards compatibility thing.
Yeah.
Which is kind of questionable because never at any point am I in dire need to play some game that came out 10 or 15 years ago. I'm thinking about stuff mainly that I like already own for PS3, since those games are, they're pretty much inaccessible unless they've been ported, since Sony doesn't seem to care about PS3 backwards compatibility.
Right.
But a lot of those
that's one of the reasons why my to cut you off, but my PS3 is still hooked up. It's still part of my entertainment center in my living room. I have the PS3, the PS5, and now the Xbox Series S, and the Switch, of course. But because I just can't cut ties with all of those PS3 games, and there's no other machines that play them.
Yeah, and sometimes it's it's not even a game that I own or whatever, but it just seems like, oh, that would be fun to check out. It's like some Xbox game that I never tried. And it seems like they have done such a good job building up like the backwards compatibility library in the Xbox side of things that it would be cool just to have a box where you can reliably play a lot of games that are not current gen.
Yeah, that was some of my consideration when deciding if I wanted to buy the Series S. Was, well, I don't have a lot of Xbox One games on discs, but I want to make sure that I'm not completely cutting myself off from being able to ever play those again. So I went through the short stack of video games that I have. I mean, really, the only thing I've been using my Xbox for the last generation and a half has been primarily first party stuff. So we're talking about any Gears game that had come out during that period, Sea of Thieves, which I've logged no shortage of hours into, and go back to periodically as they add new stuff too, and a couple of other random little things, plus whatever is tied to my account as far as indie games I've purchased in the past, and all of it still works on the new Xbox. So I didn't really feel like I was giving anything up. All of it was still available to me. There wasn't anything that I was going to well, I'll never play that game again now, which is, I think, a very serious decision you have to make when moving on from a PS3. So
yeah, it is. Yeah, at times I kind of think like, oh, maybe I would pick the wrong team for that generation, because I had that was one generation when I had both PlayStation and Xbox, but I had most of my games on PS3.
Yeah.
Because I just did not foresee Microsoft doing such a good job with the backwards compatibility later on. But yeah, definitely have thought about it. Like, oh, if only I could just convert all of my PS3 games over to Xbox games, that would be something.
That would be an impressive feat, yeah.
But it's nice that box just exists, so I could potentially, if I desperately needed to play, I don't know, insert random cross-platform PS3 game here.
Right.
It is. It's available.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, it's a cool little thing. It's nice to get half of a shelf space back in my entertainment center. That is a plus as well. The little controller is nice. They're saying 30-hour battery life on that thing, which, compared to the 5 or so hours that it feels like the PS5 controller gets is staggering. Plus, I mean, the Game Pass is awesome to have access to all of those games, and they get a lot of stuff first day of release. So yeah, it definitely feels like it was a smart choice to have just a little device in my cabinet that would play all of these Xbox games.
Oh. Well, good.
Yeah, that's cool. I would tell you too that Xbox has really nailed this whole like setting up your new device thing, because I spent an amount of time kind of Googling, like, how do I back up my saves? How do I make sure that my account transfers over to my new Xbox? And everything I read was, don't worry about it. Just hook up the new one. And make sure you have the Xbox app
at this point.
Yeah, and make sure you have the Xbox app on your phone. So I got the app on my phone, and I logged in with my Xbox account, and it says, "Are you setting up a new device?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And it said, "Tell us the code that's on the screen right now." And there was magically a code on my television screen, and I put that code in, and it said, "Sit tight, we're taking care of things for you." And 15, 20 minutes later, all of my saves were ported over. My entire account was ported over. My little Microsoft avatar guy was dancing around on the screen. I was like, oh, this feels familiar. What a refreshing change it is from getting a new Switch or getting a new PS5, where it's just like you live in abject terror of losing everything you've ever created in the gaming verse.
Well, I thought the PS5 did that.
It's better this gen. It was not great going from the 3 to 4. The 4 to 5 definitely was much improved. But the Microsoft thing, man, just felt super seamless.
Okay. Yeah, 3 to 4,
Yeah.
I was there anything that I even brought over from PS3 to PS4? I can't even remember. But
my username, that was about it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I can ask for.
Yeah.
That's good. I do kind of expect Microsoft to be a little better when it comes to sort of like software and the experience.
Yeah. We're a software company, right? So that makes sense.
Supposedly, yeah.
Please name one person who's ever had a problem with Windows.
I was gonna say, I was like trying to like be appreciative that they have a good like profile transfer thing, but then I just think about all the weird issues I run into with Windows constantly. It's like, I don't want to praise them too much here.
Yeah. They are undoubtedly listening. So
sure, yeah, of course,
yeah. But yeah, I'm hopefully will feel inspired to integrate some more Xbox games into my reviews here on the show. I actually grabbed the Gears of War Gears Tactics.
Oh, I heard that's good.
Yeah, I've heard that too, and I've wanted to play it for a long time, and it's right there in the Game Pass. So it was like, hey, do you want to download any of these games to start with? So yeah, I grabbed Tactics. Maybe I'll get to that shortly.
Man, speaking of just bizarre Microsoft-related problems, I am just completely terrified of Microsoft Game Pass for PC at this point, or whatever they call it, because I've heard... So first of all, there's this recurring issue where people will install Game Pass games on their PC, and when they're done with them, they try and delete them, and it will delete the game and just not give you the hard drive space back.
Oh my gosh.
And apparently... The last time I checked it on this, that was permanent, and the only way to solve it was reinstalling Windows, which is just like, somebody should figure that out. That seems serious.
Holy cow.
And then the most recent problem I ran into, which was very traumatic for me, is that for some reason, whenever I would play Final Fantasy XIV, my controller would randomly disconnect, which led to hysterical shenanigans, like me running off of a bunch of platforms and falling to my death at critical moments. And I spent months trying to figure out why this was happening. And it turned out it was because there was some remnant of Microsoft Flight Simulator, like the super shiny, fancy new one that came out a couple years ago, that was still on my computer from when I had like a Game Pass trial. And it was just wreaking havoc with my controller settings in other games.
Wow.
So I was like, oh, that was nice of them.
How did you even figure that out? That's so bizarre.
Well, so at one point I had practically given up, and I was just like, this is something I have to live with, which is terrible.
No, it's important to know when to admit defeat. That's important. I think that's good. Yeah.
No, it just turned out somebody on Reddit was having the same problem, and I was like, is this potentially, is this the answer I've been looking for? And it was incredible.
Hey, all right.
It was just, you could hear angels singing, which is a really great moment for me. But whenever somebody, I know Game Pass on the console side of things is super cool, but I'm just like, I'm like scared of the PC one.
I've never ventured over to the. I don't. And anybody who's listened to more than one episode of this show knows that I don't do a lot of PC gaming.
Right.
So I get the little pop-ups in Windows every now and then when I turn on my Surface that are like, "Would you like to install Xbox for Windows?" I'm like, "Nah, I'm good. I'm good." Yeah. I have hundreds of Steam games I still don't play. I don't need 100 more Microsoft games. So thank you.
That's kind of my thinking about Game Pass anyway. I mean, I know it's an incredible deal if you're just like going through games week after week, but it's like I don't subscribe to it for the same reason I don't have just every video streaming service. Like, how many do I possibly need at one time?
Right. There's a finite number of hours in a day that you can devote to watching Euphoria or playing Microsoft video games.
Right.
Yeah. I occasionally come to that realization and then do nothing about it.
Oh, you're just like, look at all these services I'm subscribed to.
Look at all the Yeah, I have an app on my phone called Truebill that like monitors my monthly expenses, and it tells me, you spent a little bit more this month on entertainment and food than you did the previous, and it just gives you a little kind of insights like that on how you spend your money, which is kind of fun. And it also tracks all of your subscriptions, so it's like you have six bills coming due in the next week, and I'm like, 6 bills? That sounds insane. What are they? And I go through, and it's Netflix and Hulu and
like,
Disney
Plus,
Plus,
it's all these things.
It's all of that shit. Yeah, which is going to hit inevitably in the same week as, my Game Pass subscription and yada yada.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I do
And
nothing.
yet, you're just like, oh, if only there was some way to make some of these go away, but what could that be?
Yeah, exactly. Anytime I feel like, well, I'm just going to cancel, HBO Max, I feel like, oh, no, wait, there's some new show coming. There's some new movie they're going to have. I'm like, I'll just carry it for a few more weeks.
Yeah, what's a few more weeks?
Yeah, and then I'll cancel it.
6 months now.
Exactly. I mean, well, I haven't launched the app in months. Yeah. Yep.
Well, glad the Xbox is working out at least.
Yeah, it's nice. It's so shiny and clean and new.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have a giant brick attached to the cord. That was the exciting thing. I was fishing the cord from the old Xbox from behind my entertainment center, and it had the giant power brick. Remember when
the Xbox
video
One
game
had
consoles?
one of those?
The Xbox One had a huge power brick on it with like a fan and lights and stuff like that.
The brick had a fan?
And then it had like a little fan inside to keep it cool.
Wow, that's weird.
It's a power brick from hell, yeah. So I had to fish all that from behind my television set and dust it all off, obviously. And
does the PS5
I was super excited.
have a power brick?
I don't think the PS5 does, no.
Okay. I was just like, okay, if it's going to be that big anyway, the power thing should be inside it.
Yeah.
So I guess
that clearly was
Sony
not
figured that out.
The conclusion they came to when making the Xbox One. But what was my point? Yeah, so it was super exciting to see that the Series S does not have a power brick. It's just a nice cable, just a nice cord that plugs into the wall.
That's good. That's
what a delight.
Nice change.
One less thing behind my TV collecting dust.
Yeah.
So talk to me, DJ, about Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster.
So this just came out. I don't know if you've been following this whole Pixel Remaster saga, but I think it was sometime last year they announced that they were going to do remasters of the first 6 Final Fantasy games as they're all the 2D ones, which was kind of a surprise announcement, but and also very exciting because, a lot of those are people's favorite Final Fantasies, especially, in my generation who grew up playing the Super Nintendo ones. But it was also a little weird because when they first announced them, there was they gave us so little information. I think they pretty much just said Final Fantasy 1 through 6 pixel remasters, and they showed like a couple screenshots of these games that looked pretty similar to the originals. Like the graphics were clearly retouched slightly, but beyond that, very little to go on.
Mm-hmm.
And then they started coming out, and general consensus is that they're all pretty good.
Hey.
Like, what they've done is, you hear this getting thrown around a lot when people talk about remastering games, is you start one up and it looks how you remember the game looking. It doesn't look exactly how it did back in the day, because if you were to go back and load up one of the original versions of these, probably doesn't look as good as your memories would lead you to believe. But they've done such a nice job of like cleaning up the pixel art. They've redrawn all of the like the character sprites and redone a lot of the background art. They made it like 16:9 widescreen, so you run it on a modern display. It just looks terrific. It looks really good.
So is there original code being sort of like repurposed here, or is this all sort of coded from new?
I think it's all new. I think it's running in Unity. I just read that this afternoon.
Oh, okay, interesting.
So these are, I guess, more or less rebuilt from the ground up. I don't know how
it's a remake more than a remaster.
Sure. But I mean, it seems like they're not trying to treat it as a remake. It's sort of like this is the game you remember,
unfutzed with. Yes.
Yes, that's the hope. It's not like, I don't know what good example of this, or would they like change a little too much?
Well, the new Final Fantasy, the one that they just split into two halves that took forever to come out.
Yeah, 7. Who knows what's going on with that one? That is,
yeah.
I don't even think that's the same game anymore at this point. But yeah, it just seems like this is more or less the original game, to the point where I bought this on Steam, and if you look it up on Steam, it's not even listed under like Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster. It's just called Final Fantasy VI, which I thought was interesting.
Oh.
Because previous to this, and this is like, yeah, there's a lot of controversy surrounding these. The only way to play a couple of these were like ports of a mobile version, which mobile versions not so hot in the graphics department. There's just a lot of weird, like strangely redrawn sprites and poorly like retextured backgrounds. This has been documented extensively by angry Final Fantasy fans on the internet, as you can imagine. But for the most part, these look really good, and I played several hours of 6 over the last week, and yeah, it looks really good. They did a really good job.
Cool. This is kind of an interesting sort of release strategy on these. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they're on Steam, but they're also on mobile, right? You can't get it like on the Switch or on the PlayStation or anything like that.
Yes, that is another baffling thing about this series, is that you're right, it's only Steam and mobile.
So those mobile versions have been pretty dubious in the past, but this maybe sort of replaces that.
No, this seems like a complete 100% improvement over those previous mobile versions.
Huh.
I mean, I can't speak for all of them, but I know the mobile versions of 5 and 6 especially were very weird looking. But no, these look great. And I found out just recently that apparently, so the original artist who did the sort of classic pixel art for all these games, Kazuko Shibuya, was actually the art director for this project, all the remakes. Which I think, that probably explains it. So just having somebody who has been that closely involved with the art since like Final Fantasy 1 overseeing everything, probably a good call.
Yeah. What a cool bookend to your career too, right?
Yeah.
That's, you made 6 of the more influential RPGs of all time, and then you get to make sure that they're cleaned up and preserved for future generations.
Yeah. The only weird thing that still remains, other than, like we were saying, they're only on Steam and mobile, it seems inevitable that they will be on every console under the sun at some point.
Right.
But if you look at these, and you look at the menus, they've chosen a very weird, like, font for all of these, which this sounds like it's really nitpicking, but it is just, it's very questionable. It's like, it's a very like narrow font. It really doesn't fit in with like the general sort of pixely look of the game. It looks very sort of modern compared to everything else. And it's just like, it's so narrow. It's kind of hard to read and just kind of unpleasant to look at in a game where you have to read a lot of dialogue.
Yeah. They better fix that before they put it on the Switch. That's problematic.
Well, that's what I was thinking, because like people are so upset about this font that as soon as the Steam versions came out, people were very quick to cobble together like these font mods where you could just download one and just copy a few files into your Steam install. And it would replace the font with like fonts from other popular console RPGs. So there's one based on like the original Final Fantasy, like 4, 5, and 6 font, I believe. There's some from like Earthbound and Mother 3, and just other sort of proven pixel fonts. Turns out it's very easy to sub one of them in.
Can I get it in Comic Sans?
Maybe somebody's made that. I don't know.
That's my one request. That's all I have. Yep.
But it's like, oh, wow, that was so easy. Why didn't they just do that? And
yeah,
like nobody knows. No one knows what they're thinking. I feel like it's just an oversight, because if you look at the Japanese version, the font they use for all the Japanese characters looks very nice. And it's sort of like proportionally correct to all the other stuff going on the screen. But for some reason, the English font is just this weird, very narrow monstrosity. And I'm kind of thinking, like, I hope part of the reason they're waiting for them, they're waiting to release them on consoles, is that they're going to do something about this. So console players get like a nice version without this weird font aberration.
You get the early access version of Final Fantasy VI, yeah.
Because it feels like, especially looking at the mobile versions, which, for the longest time was the only way you could play some of these games. Like, shouldn't every new version you release at least attempt to, like, live up to the standards of quality of the original as the bare minimum? Like, you don't have to like take it to the next level or anything, but just give me that same experience that I had playing this back on the Super Nintendo or wherever. Like, don't do something worse than worked 20 years ago.
Well, especially since so many game developers at this point seem very focused on accessibility and making their games accessible to people with different disabilities or different abilities to see specific colors or read in different ways. I think that it's surprising to not give options to address the font and the clarity of that, or what, how it's presented on the screen in kind of this, the modern perspective on video game accessibility.
I think it's just something that people don't really consider. And I saw this again, like when they first started porting like console games to mobile, when it first became sort of practical, when they like rolled out the iOS App Store and all that stuff, is you would get these ports, which I think probably at that point they used the original pixel art or something close to it. But then the way I imagine it happening is somebody at Square Enix or wherever would say, oh, hey, we're not limited to just that chunky pixel font that we had to use on the Super Nintendo. We can use something much more like modern and high res. So just pick a font. And it seemed like with a lot of those early games, they just went with like Arial or Helvetica or whatever, just the most stock fonts you can imagine, which are fine. But if you look at it in these menus, you kind of go like, well, doesn't really have the same character of the original fonts in these games. I mean, it looks very nice and sharp, but also just very out of place. But that is how these games existed since they started putting them on mobile. And it just feels like that Square Enix has just never really made it a priority to get these fonts looking the way they should.
Yeah. I mean, geez, if it looks terrible on a monitor, how does it look on the screen of a Android phone? That's got to be,
I don't know,
a problem. Yeah, I know. Not to pick on Android, I have an Android, but
sure.
There's a lot of disparity across the Android spectrum. Not everybody's running $1,000 Pixel 6. Everybody, there's a lot of different sort of points of entry to the Android world, and they don't all come with super high resolution screens. So
yeah.
I can only imagine what some of that experience is like for people trying to play Final Fantasy games.
Anyway, so it's just a shame that there's this one weird lingering problem, because for the most part, like, the game looks great, it sounds great. Yeah. They've sort of like remastered the soundtrack as well, so that's very good. It still plays very well. And it feels like these should just be, or could potentially be, a new, nearly definitive version of these games. Like, I'm sure people will probably still prefer like the original version of the soundtrack if you grew up playing those. But there's just like this weird font issue. Like, guys, just fix this one thing, and you'll have a really great game on your hands. But until then, it's just this strange sort of like weird thing sticking out.
Afterthought. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, has there been any sort of acknowledgement of this on behalf of Square Enix, right?
Oh no, I mean they're as tight-lipped as ever. So
yeah,
fingers crossed that they will actually do something for the inevitable console ports. But until then, there's the Steam version.
So away from the font issue, why start with Final Fantasy VI? Why not just go back to 1?
Good question. I've been kind of wondering, like, especially with the considering the font issue, because I think ultimately I'd like to play these on Switch, right?
Gotcha.
Unfortunately, they're not out on Switch, so who knows when that's happening. But I've definitely looked at each one of these that's come out because they've released them sort of one after the other a few months apart. And I had the same thought every single time, like, oh, it's been a while since I played Final Fantasy 1 or 2 or 3, and just keep going down the line. But I thought, so 6 finally came out. 6 has been probably the most elusive out of all of these because aside from the original release, I think it came out on Game Boy Advance. I mean, there are like a few ports over the years since it was first released, but it hasn't been quite as frequent in its appearance as some of the other ones.
In terms of just availability?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, I really like Final Fantasy VI, so I thought, okay, I might as well just give this one a try and see how they did.
Cool. Yeah, I'm looking at the bundle on Steam right now. You get all 6 for $75. It's a big ask.
It's a lot of games. I'm not totally sure how those early ones hold up, but 4, 5, and 6 pretty much universally loved by all Final Fantasy fans, I would hope. But 6 is great. Like, it's been super fun coming back to it. It holds up surprisingly well. It's very interesting in that it's kind of like a major shift tonally in the series. It's very modern compared to the previous ones. Like, the first 5 games, you started up and you get this nice title screen with like a crystal on it, and there's this peaceful music playing, and it's been a very standard experience starting at one of these games. You start at Final Fantasy VI, and there's like this organ music, which turns eventually into this like demonic choir, and there's no crystal in sight. You just have the logo for Final Fantasy VI, and the logo is on fire, and you're just like, what is happening with this game?
This is the darkest timeline. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you're immediately that switches over to this sort of opening text crawl, which informs you that like hundreds of years ago there was this great war between like these powerful sorcerers that were just like destroying each other with magic spells, and as a result of that war, like the world was destroyed and magic basically ceased to exist. And following that, the world has rebuilt itself without the use of magic. And it's basically this kind of like weird steampunk society. So it's like very modern, and there's all this technology everywhere. And there are these big like steampunk robots walking around. And just looking at it, you go, well, this doesn't really look like Final Fantasy. It's like this weird other thing. So it's very different, but very cool. Still a very intriguing setting. Then you've got this like militaristic empire, which is trying to take over the world, is trying to bring magic back from wherever it went. And then you play as a bunch of resistance members trying to stop them.
Excellent.
So kind of classic premise, but just a lot of variables have been changed around.
Does the main character have amnesia?
In fact, she does. Which,
yeah, excellent.
Which hadn't really like registered with me the first time I played this because I hadn't played a whole lot of like RPGs up to this point. I feel like it wasn't as much of a trope back then.
Yeah.
So I was just like, okay. But this time,
It's
coming
such a
back to it,
trope.
she's got like, she sort of like gets out of the sticky situation and doesn't remember who she is. And I was just like, oh no, it's happening. She's
That
just
old
another
yarn.
amnesiac RPG protagonist. I didn't even realize it at the time. So good.
Excellent. Well, the game that started it all, presumably.
Well, now I'm trying to think, like, what other games back then did you lose your memory at the very start? I can't remember.
Yeah.
But ironically enough. But anyway, so the game still plays great. Got a huge cast of characters. Very interesting because since you don't have magic anymore, you would think that would just leave your characters with just a straight up attack option in battle, which would be very boring. But what they've done instead is this kind of builds on the job system from previous Final Fantasy games, where each character still has kind of a predefined job, and they all have a little unique job skill that they can use. So instead of casting magic, you very early on you get a thief in your party who can steal items. You meet up with another character who's an engineer who just has this bottomless backpack full of gadgets. So he's got like a machine gun, crossbow, and this thing that like shoots toxic gas at all the enemies. It's really good. But just lots of character variety, lots of like fun little toys they can all use during fights. And eventually, like, you still do have a couple characters who can use magic for reasons that are explained in the story. But it's very cool, very kind of diverse cast. Lots of interesting drama that happens.
That sounds like a pretty big detour from what the general presumptions I make about what a Final Fantasy game is like.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think this is where they really started to, like, be, I guess, less fearful of shaking things up. I don't know if that was... I mean, they seem pretty content to just stick with sort of the fantasy mold, with some sci-fi thrown in occasionally for the earlier ones. But, like, here you have, like, the sort of steampunk setting. And then after this, it's off to Final Fantasy VII, which is just, very modern and borderline sci-fi for a lot of it. And then it just goes to even crazier places after that. But it was kind of a reminder that this was, like, a huge shift for the series, which is very cool, very memorable.
Cool.
And so far I've been pretty happy with it.
Nice.
There's not been anything... I can't think of anything really that jumps out at me about this remastered edition that detracts from it a whole lot. It's been such a long time since I played it that it's almost like coming back to it fresh. Because I still remember the general story beats, but I think... it also has a redone localization, which is a little more sort of polished and modern, so that's fun. It's
cool.
Kind of a new take on it. But that's been good. It's like surprisingly brisk. Back then they had to squeeze everything onto like a Super NES cartridge so that there wasn't a huge amount of dialogue and like expansive cutscenes like you would have in a modern Final Fantasy game. So it's been kind of surprising just how much of the plot, or just huge plot developments, are addressed by like a character will just say one or two lines and then just move on to the next scene, which is sometimes I sort of wish they would let things sit for a little while before moving on, but it's still fun. It's just sort of a non-stop very fast-paced story.
Yeah, How Long to Beat says 32 to 35 hours. That's a whole lot of nothing by modern RPG standards.
For the new one?
Let's see. Which one are they referencing here? It just is how long is Final Fantasy VI.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, that's probably about right. I'm probably on pace to do something like that. But it's been surprising to me because I remember when I played this back in the day, I would just spend hours probably just doing the same stuff or trying to do the same stuff that I've done in this game in just a few days of playing it. I'm pretty sure my final time was something closer to like 50 or 60 hours. But, I just played a few hours this weekend and I feel like I'm at a point where it probably would have taken me like 15 or 20 hours to get to in the original. So, not sure what's up with that.
How Long to Beat also says at a leisurely pace, about 50 hours. So
okay, so maybe I was just much more leisurely about it.
Yeah. Well, it says a completionist playthrough could take you up to 132. So.
Oh yeah, well, there's a whole lot of like side stuff to do, and just in-game stuff. Speaking of in-game stuff, so I know a couple of the ports of this had added extra content, like just end stuff to do after you finish the game, and I believe that is not included in this one. It more or less feels like just a straight port of the original one. I can understand it's probably disappointing to some people who were expecting the extra stuff, but it doesn't really bother me that much. It really does feel like they just wanted to bring back the original game.
Right.
But anyway, so Pixel Remaster
cool.
Turned out it was pretty good after all, aside from the font stuff, but just so good to be able to come back to this game and have like a version that is not embarrassing to look at. Because all the graphics look weird or whatever. And like I was saying, it looks like how I remember it looking, even if it doesn't, it's not exactly how it looked back in the day.
Well, cool. I always get nervous when things like this roll around, and I suspect, Final Fantasy fans such as yourself were probably nervous too, to sort of see if, did they break it? Did they ruin it? Did they, somehow mess with this thing that, I love or other people love.
Well, after the mobile ports, that's been sort of my reaction to it when they announced this thing. Sure. I was like, okay, guys, just don't ruin it. That's all I ask.
That is not an unreasonable concern, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of depressing that is just the bar they have to hit. Just like, don't make it bad. Just
break it.
Put out the original one. Just don't make it worse, please.
Well, good. Well, cool. And yeah, I think and not that there's a lot of fear about Final Fantasy games just sort of like disappearing into the void of inaccessibility. But
there was for this one.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's true. I tend to think, Final Fantasy is just one of those ubiquitous things that it's always around, that it's always getting re-released and remastered, and I don't think about it at a granular level, like which specific games or side games and stuff like that are accessible. I just think it's Final Fantasy; it'll never go away.
Right. It is true that there'll probably always be some Final Fantasy game out there for you to play.
Right. And just I've been thinking about sort of the Wii U eShop being shut down and the 3DS eShop being shut down early next year. And there's some article I read about something like 1,800 games will just disappear forever.
Yeah.
Just will not be available on any other platform or console. They will go away with the close of those shops. Thinking, geez, somebody somewhere has a responsibility to make sure that, these video games, those video games are available someplace, are cataloged somewhere and accessible in some way. And, not every game is Final Fantasy VI, but, it is the result of someone putting a lot of hard work and love, presumably, into something that they put out into the universe. There should be some tool for preserving that.
Yeah. And, there are definitely organizations working on that kind of thing. But you would hope that the original sort of like publishers / developers, whoever, would be as invested as those groups.
Yeah.
So it's nice when something like this pops up.
Assuming those publishers and those developers even still exist.
That's true, yeah. I mean, Square Enix, I guess, is kind of unique in that way, in that they've managed to stay independent, I guess.
Square Enix still exists?
Square Enix still exists? Yeah, I think so. I think they're still around.
Still making games?
Yeah. But I mean, just like in light of all the like recent acquisitions and companies getting folded into other companies.
Yeah. I said that as a smartass, but when you put it that way, absolutely. They could be swallowed up by some new behemoth, and yeah. Good times.
Oh, man. Yeah. There was, game development was very different back then. There are all these rumors, probably more than rumors at this point, about how they lost a bunch of source code to older games, like Final Fantasy VIII in particular. Which is just unfathomable to think about. Like, oh, you just lost an entire game? These days, you can't imagine that happening.
Yeah.
But, back then, sometimes it was just like, well, we finished that game. Don't need this code anymore, so might as well just toss it out to save space on a hard drive somewhere.
Just delete it. Yeah. Yikes.
Yeah. But anyway, so in case it wasn't clear, Final Fantasy VI, it's good again. And I'm looking forward to going back and checking out those other remasters eventually.
Cool.
When I have time to just slot in 5 more multi-hour RPGs.
Right, exactly. That is a hell of a backlog attack. Speaking of backlog attacks, I have taken the occasion of the release of the new Horizon game, which I think, as you mentioned earlier, is called The Forbidden West, to finally attempt to play the first Horizon game, which I never got around to.
This is interesting because I was thinking of doing the same thing.
Oh, really? We should have co-conspired on this.
I played a little bit of the original.
This at one point, right? Yeah, I was going to say, I thought I had a memory of you talking about it.
I played a little bit of it. I played probably more hours than I remember. But yeah, I'm not, I wouldn't be going into this completely fresh.
Yeah. I went into it completely fresh. In fact, I didn't recall that I had even bought it. Okay. I almost bought it again. I've been reading some of the reviews, and it pops up on other gaming podcasts and stuff. The new Horizon game, and getting pretty good reviews. People seem to like it. I'm like, really should play that first one. And it's only $10 in the eShop right now, and I need some stuff to play on my PS5. So I almost dropped $10 on it, and then I was like, did I buy this at some point? And just pulled every game out of my my little console, my entertainment center. I have a little fabric bin that fits in the cabinet underneath that just has stacks and stacks of video games in it. And lo and behold, a sealed, pristine copy of Horizon Zero Dawn that I probably spent more than $10 on at some point.
Undoubtedly.
So, yeah, pulled the plastic off, dropped it into the PS5, and now I'm playing Horizon Zero Dawn. I don't know. I don't know why I didn't get around to this when it first came out. I don't know what came out at the same time of it. This feels like a thing that I would be excited to play. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's Guerrilla Games. I've liked most of they previously made all the Killzone games. I like those. I had a lot of fun with those. This was a pretty significant detour for them from, sci-fi, hardcore RPG shooter games. So yeah, it was, generally well received. People seemed to like it when it came out, and yet still did not find the time or the enthusiasm until just now to attempt to play it. Yeah, I mean, this is sort of AAA prestige, top shelf video gaming. It is quite striking when this game first fires up, and you get just a dead-on camera shot of a tribal painted warrior type person speaking in beautifully delivered lines, and you see just immaculate facial animations and eyes that look very real, and no uncanny valley whatsoever. It's just gorgeous.
Uncanny valley whatsoever, huh?
Yeah, not in my
game. Maybe remembering this differently.
Yeah, I thought it was gorgeous. I thought it really was quite striking how good it looked, and how sort of kind of real I thought it looked.
Okay, I mean the graphics are very impressive, but I couldn't help but get a little bit of that just Mass Effect giant talking head kind of spitting out some lines, looking straight at the camera, maybe slightly off camera.
Yeah.
And then they just like, I should go and slide off screen, but that's just my memory of this game.
No, I don't remember, and I went into this with maybe a fair amount of cynicism, but I don't remember feeling cynical about that at all. I was like, oh, wow.
I'm not trying to be cynical about it. I understand at a certain point that is just how you made a video game. That is what all video games look like. Yeah.
But yeah, so the hook here is that you start off as a little girl who, under mysterious circumstances, has been exiled from her tribe and is being taken care of by this mysterious sort of father figure who is, you learn quickly, not her father. I thought I was quite amused early on when it was like, okay, if you want to grow up and join this competition to earn your way back into the tribe, you have to train. You have to train for years. And then they cut to a montage of her training like Rocky.
Yeah.
Like running up the stairs of the library, other things like that. And I was like, oh, really? We're going to do a montage, huh? And then cut to her being, 20-ish years old and a much older and wiser and seasoned explorer and fighter. And she's out in the world. Yeah, much more ripped, yeah. She has much better hair at that point, too, I think. Just a mess as a kid. And is out in the world now and tracking and hunting like robot animal amalgams. It's a weird thing that I presume I will get more information on the further we go. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, this world, there's like real critters running around. You get little rats and turkeys, like flesh animals in the environment. But there are also, robot horses and robot jaguars and things. Big, scary, giant, huge. They look like dinosaurs.
Yeah, those big tall ones with the radar dish on their head. Those are cool.
Yeah, and you could jump on them and climb them, and so that was kind of weird. But there's definitely an interesting sort of sci-fi post-apocalyptic hook here that maybe has not been explored in too many video games or pieces of movies and things like that. So. I'm kind of into it. It's
man, have I got a series of at least 6 JRPGs for you?
Trying so hard to get me to play Final Fantasy games, DJ.
Just saying.
Yeah, just saying they're out there. Yeah. I don't know. It's so hard to sort of assess something like this because it, is clearly done with a high level of polish and, just a high level of presentation. It is unfortunately not the most interesting gameplay loop thus far. A lot of it is sort of like, go to this place and get this thing from this person. And on the way there, because it's an open world game, you get distracted and lured off to the side. And, there's a roving band of these kinds of robots with something mysterious inside. And they have, perimeter guards. And if you tap the shoulder button, you can see their patrol route. And then you have to sort of bypass the patrol route and jump on their back and yank the sensor eye out of their head and stuff like that. And then you save the little robot parts and you can craft them into new tools and weapons and trade them with this one trader who will talk to the people who have been exiled. And that's when it starts to feel like just, you're hitting all of those sort of beats that I expect from a game at this sort of level of visibility, I think.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's when you get all your crafting materials and that stuff. And your upgrade trees.
I need new arrows. How do I get new arrows? Oh, you've got to kill some of the robot animals and yank the parts out of their skull and turn them into arrows.
Mm-hmm. Plus one boar.
And you do it on the fly.
You need a very specific boar part.
Yes, yeah. But then if you want fire arrows, you got to fight a different type of a boar and on and on. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, if these are hunter-gatherers, what are they eating? They're clearly not eating the robot animals. At some point, they must be actually eating animals, or maybe they're just eating vegetables all the time, which would be my kind of people.
The boar might also be involved.
It might actually, yeah. It's fine.
It's fine.
I don't know. It's not the best video game I've ever played. I don't think it's the best example even of a AAA kind of video gamey experience. That whole just map full of icons thing is a huge turnoff because I do not want to spend 100 hours just chasing down all the blips on this screen.
I think so. One of the issues I had with it, I had kind of the same impression is that it looks amazing and it just feels like it should be this revolutionary thing, like having an open world that looks this good. But there was just it felt like there was just a lot sort of bogging it down, whether it's the icons on the map or the just crafting system, which it felt like I was never really able to fully utilize because I was always missing certain ingredients. But what really did it in for me is that it's essentially open world stealth. And the way I play stealth games, it just means that it took me probably 10 times as long to do any individual thing in this game. Whether it was there are a few instances where you have to kind of sneak up on an enemy camp or something. And I suppose you could just run in and, do it guns blazing style, but I would like painstakingly like make my way around the perimeter of the camp and tag every single enemy unit inside until I had the perfect plan. And it would just take me hours to do that. And like making my way between locations, I would just see a flock of like robots or whatever roaming around, and I would go, oh, I need crafting materials from them. So I would then like get off my horse or whatever, my robot horse, and like hide in the grass and just spend another half an hour just sizing up these enemy robots. And it just felt like I wasn't making any progress.
Yeah.
And I think I was like enjoying the actual sort of hunting elements, like tracking these robots and watching their patrol routes and getting the stealth kills on them. Like that was all very exciting. But I probably played this for hours and probably got like 5 to 10% through however long this game ends up being.
Yeah. I was pleasantly surprised by how much stealth there is in it, but yeah, I think, and I like stealth in a video game. I like stealth in open world games too. I played the most of the Watchdog games 99% stealth, as much as I possibly could, just because running around and shooting in those games was not terribly fun. And I think I am playing it on an easy enough mode. I think that even below easy, there is a mode in this game called story.
A story mode.
And and a lot of the more assertive enemies kind of just fall over dead at the sight of you. And there was a mission earlier on where your trainer, your father figure, is like, okay, you're gonna go alone now. I won't be able to be there to help you. You're going to go fight this really terrifying monster. The first really scary one.
I didn't like that one at all.
Yeah. And I was expecting just a higher level of resistance from this thing. And yeah, I bopped him once in the head with my little baton stick thing, and he fell over dead and exploded.
Okay, well, wait a minute. That might be easier than I want it to be.
Yeah, I kind of feel like maybe I need to just kick it up one notch. Maybe just go into easy and don't necessarily play it on story, because it was a little anticlimactic. And I have to presume that the developers did not intend the game to be despite having put a story mode into it, not quite what they had in mind when they were propositioning this. So
they can't just tell the big like dog or whatever, just like, okay, don't make it too easy. Like let her like get a couple good hits on you before you go down.
Yeah, get her down to like 20% health before you fall over dead.
Yeah.
Yep.
Gotta last till the third round or whatever.
Yeah, so it did take a little bit of the fun out of it. And it's the first time really I've ever felt like, generally I feel like sort of the easy button, the story mode in these games is kind of the best way to consume them, because it's just, it gets out of the way of a lot of that sort of like just painful beating your head against a wall against some unforgiving boss or some random encounter that you can't seem to get past. And in Horizon Zero Dawn, unfortunately, it seems to have shifted the balance of power a little too far in the other direction. So when I go back to it, I think I maybe need to kick it up to at least easy.
Well, that's interesting. So this is the first game I can remember having that story level of difficulty. I remember it was very controversial when they first announced it, because gamers. But I was thinking, when I was thinking I should go back and play this because the new one came out, I thought, I'll just put it on that story difficulty and blast through it. But now I'm thinking, okay, maybe that is too far. Maybe I'll just play it on something lower than normal. Because I remember it was fairly challenging on the default setting. I started at story, so I don't have a point of reference, so I'm not sure how significantly it ramps up or down. But yeah, I knew I didn't, I think like you, want to spend 16 hours trying to look for the optimum way to get into these enemy encampments or whatever. Yeah, I mean, at this point, I was definitely more open to it the first couple times I attempted to play it, because I was like, oh yeah, stealth. But now I just kind of want to get the Horizon experience.
Yeah. I'm a little intrigued. There's definitely some, little sci-fi beats, some little story leads and stuff like that, where I'm sort of like, what's going on there? What does that mean? That's kind of interesting. So I do want to see how those things kind of suss out. I want to find out why the world is full of robot animals. Hopefully we give up some information on that eventually too. So I'm curious. Yeah, I'm intrigued to see where it goes, and certainly the quality of the presentation, almost can't be beat. So I just have to find a way to sort of consume it that syncs up with the way that I want to play open world games at this point in my life.
Is this just the straight up PS4 version you're playing? That's not like a PS5 enhanced version or anything?
I think it is enhanced. When I put it in the PS5, it updated obviously and installed, and then it did some other little patchy thing. So I think that little patchy add-on must have been whatever the PS5 upgrade is. But it is the PS4 disc that I just dropped into my PS5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's good. It's a very pretty game.
Do you think you're going to continue with it if once you change the difficulty around?
Yeah, I want to stick with it. Like I said, I did not spend a ton of hours, maybe 6-7 hours with it thus far, and I'm kind of into it. I don't know. I don't play a lot of games like this anymore, so it's hard to sort of like assess where does this fit into my tastes. Like I feel like I could play, I could probably play 4 or 5 really cool indie games in the time it's going to take me to get through Horizon Zero Dawn. And does that seem like a fair trade to me? You know what I mean? So even beyond sort of the scope of what we do on the show and having to have some cool new game to talk about each week, and that sort of self-imposed pressure. I don't know. I don't play a lot of these great big giant. I'm not playing Elden Ring. I'm not playing GTA and things like that these days. So, I just have to sort of self-negotiate on how much time I want to spend with something like this if I'm truly not having a ton of fun with it.
Sometimes it's fun for me to just like spend a few hours with an enormous like AAA game like this, just because again, it's not typically what I play. It just feels very decadent. Just looking at it, and be like, oh man, look how good the graphics are in this game, or just look how much voice acting there is, or how cool these animations are. I'm just seeing screenshots of the new one. I'm just kind of in disbelief at how good the visuals are. But well, that's not only PS5, is it? It's on PS4 as well.
The New Horizon?
Yeah.
That I don't know. I'm not sure.
I thought there was some controversy over there being a PS4 version.
Oh. Inevitably, I'm sure. But no, I don't know. I can't confirm or deny. It reminds me a lot, and maybe just because you get to kind of a snowy bit, and the snow's done really well, and you're kind of exploring, and there's little hidden caves and things like that, and it feels a lot about similar to kind of the 2017 God of War to me, in terms of kind of quality of presentation and voice acting and writing and tension and the sense of exploration and things like that. And I thought that game did all of those things very well and looked great. So I mean, maybe the nicest thing I can say about kind of Horizon at this point is it really makes me want to play God of War.
Okay.
Because I really like that game. I thought that was a great game and did a lot of these big AAA things in a way that felt kind of fresh and creative. And to take a 15, 16, 17-year-old series like God of War and to put a new spin on it and modernize it in this way, it was, felt very refreshing.
Oh, please don't tell me that God of War is that old. That's horrifying.
PS2, right?
Yeah,
Wasn't
no,
the first one on PS2?
It was 2005 or 6 or something.
Time is very slippery. I can't keep up with these things.
Yeah. Please don't remind me, I should say.
Yeah, but I'll spend some more time with it. I'll chime in again before I either cross the finish line or decide I've seen enough. But I don't know. I'm intrigued by this.
Do you think what's the likelihood at this point that you will end up playing the new one? Like you don't play any more of this, how excited are you for the new one at this point?
If I don't play any more of this, there's zero chance I'll play.
Okay, zero. Okay,
yeah,
interesting.
Yep. But yeah, if this, if this delivers on sort of what it's promising in terms of exciting sci-fi revelations, and cool gameplay, and I get a little deeper into some of the skill tree stuff, which sounds like fun. I think I looking at the things that you can kind of upgrade and the moves that you can give Aloy eventually, it sounds like there's some kind of cool fun stuff you can do in terms of like dropping from enemies on high and stuff like that, like Splinter Cell kind of moves that I want to deploy.
I do remember really enjoying that skill tree and just like looking at the advanced unlocks and being like, ooh, imagine how cool I'm going to be in 20 hours from now.
Exactly. Give me some skill points, please.
Yeah.
So yeah, I maybe we'll see. Those things I have been a sucker for in previous games like this. So yeah, if I get to the point where I feel like just a one-woman killing machine, just storming through the apocalypse, tearing up robot animals, that'd be exciting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. See, that's what I want, but reality is I was mostly a one-woman hiding in the tall grass machine.
But how beautifully is that grass rendered?
Oh, no, yeah, it's great. It just moves so realistically with the wind. It's terrific.
Gorgeous. So yeah, Horizon Zero Dawn. It's fine.
It's fine. The 2-word review.
Put that on the back of your box.
Yeah.
Do you think you'll go back to this? You said it sounds like you're kind of into
I would
it.
like to, yeah. I think the fact that you're playing through this, I will maybe go into this weekend. And
cool.
Who knows? Maybe I'll just knock it out in one 48-hour play session.
Just clear your weekend.
Yeah. I'll have Final Fantasy on the other screen. It'll just be a great weekend all around.
Cool. All right. That's all I got, I think. You got anything else you want to talk about?
I think that's it.
How's our time? Ooh, we're running long.
Yeah, well, a lot of games to get through.
That's true. We should wrap this up, though. If you need any more video game hangover in your brain, definitely follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/VGHangover. And you can always get show notes and links and tell us what you thought about this episode at VGHangover.com. We would love for you to hang out with us on Discord. Man, we've been talking a lot about the Steam Deck on Discord lately.
Where's your Steam Deck? Did that show up yet?
It has not shown up. No, I'm Q2, so I'm still a little far out. Yeah.
All right.
But we do have a few Q1s in our Discord, and we're hoping that they get their Steam Deck sooner rather than later. What else are we talking about on there? We're talking about Elden Ring. We do have some folks in the community who are playing the game and are very excited about it. DJ's been doing some streaming. So yeah, definitely hit up our Discord to keep abreast of all of those things and join in the conversation with us.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get a link to that at VGHangover.com as well. We would love for you to subscribe, rate, and review us on your podcasting app of choice. And help us out by telling your friends about the show, please.
Yes, we really appreciate it. Helps us get the word out, grow the audience, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
We want to give thanks again to Protodome this week for our intro and outro music. Please go to protodome.bandcamp.com. You can find his entire discography. Listen to some of it, and then maybe buy some of it. Maybe buy all of it. Go crazy. Who knows?
That would be a very thoughtful thing to do.
Yeah.
Tell them Video Game Hangover sent you.
Oh, yeah. Put that in the comments. Don't know who you are, but I heard about you on this show.
All right, we'll be back next week. Until then, this is Randy Dickinson.
This is DJ Ross.
Thanks so much for listening to Video Game Hangover. We'll talk to you later. Goodbye.
Good night.
See ya.